cultural giants. Say what you think. They allowed you to call your women bitches and whores.
I love you too, Mama.
You want to see black people free?
With the money came true if they let us be militant, but the level that's diligent. They always see the catches beforehand. In fact, they got the rest of the floor plan. First certificate filed, then the section. Child if you doubt the owner, you should fly out of town so you can find some quick trust. Legos, my car, duck car, kick tail, Bearcats, Nairobi, but bars all over. We should be controlling things instead of plotting on social fun. They want to do they promise and don't come down. So what? My mama ain't I grown up. Try to fight every battle, man. You don't want what you told us. I say they want to take Beyonce, but they protect the truth. Can't watch it all day. Why I gotta be you? I wanna see my people
Islam, 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 everybody. I'm experiencing a little technical difficulties. I'm trying to bring my brothers in right now. So while I'm doing that, I want to start by saying that I rise, giving all praise to Allah and the highest of honors to His holy and divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali. I extend those honors to the harbinger and forerunner, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I extend honors to all true and divine prophets. I extend honors to all freedom fighters and leaders who were sent to us in the West. And I extend honors to you all, for when man honors man, he honors his father, God, Allah. Now, this particular topic about citizenship answers a specific question about were we citizens on this land? This is something that appears to not have really been fully settled. We were having a discussion the other night, and it was, a couple sovereign citizen Moors, a brother named Ramiel Bey and brother Alim Bey. And Alim Bey tried to reinforce his position that the Dred Scott decision was in fact law. Now, instead of citing anything tangible, one of the sources that he cited was Mike Huckabee, who said that Dred Scott was never overturned. And a lot of our people ran with this claim that there was no overturning of the Dred Scott decision, and that essentially we are all still slaves according to their logic. I'm trying to get my brothers in here right now. Bear with me. My Facebook page on my computer is just taking forever to load. I don't know if it's the Google Hangouts right now, but until they come on, I'm just going to give you all an overview. Now, many people believe that, particularly in Moorish circles, many people believe that, and they want to believe that the Dred Scott decision is still binding upon our people, and that the only way for you to get that, the only way for you to get out of this particular status is to proclaim your nationality. And in order to proclaim your nationality, you have to buy one of their sovereignty packages. Now, we in our show address this insofar as proclaiming your nationality is not a process by which you have to file paperwork. Prophet Noble Drew Ali came and let it be known that we were citizens here already and that we had fallen. To cite, let me see if I can get my camera back up and running. I'm going to get me a PC cam soon. I actually have two. I just can't find them at the moment. But one of the things that Prophet Noble Drew Ali stated was this. He said, I need all support from all true American citizens. Okay, I'm having issues with my camera now. Hold on 1 second, people. Okay, I'm having some issues. I'm just going to read. Now, Prophet Noble Drew Ali states this. I need all support from all true American citizens of the United States of America. Help me to save my people who have fallen from the constitutional laws of the government. I am depending on your support to get them back to the constitutional fold again, that they will learn to love instead of hate and will live according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, supporting our free national constitution of the United States of America. Now, those unfamiliar with the Moorish paradigm and the Moorish doctrine, this particular aspect of the Constitution has been misconstrued to mean that Prophet Noble Drew Ali was speaking about the organization's bylaws, which Prophet Noble Drew Ali called the Divine Constitution and Bylaws. Now, clearly, Prophet Noble Drew Ali states that what he's speaking about is the National Constitution of the United States of America. But what's so important here, yeah, Islam Moore, I hear you. Mute out real quick, and then I'm gonna introduce you. Let me just make this point real quick. The Prophet, I want to reiterate. Prophet Noble Drew Ali says, I need all support from all true American citizens of the United States of America. Help me to save my people who have fallen from the constitutional laws of the government. I am depending on your support to get them back to the constitutional fold again, that they will learn to love instead of hate and will live according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, supporting our free national constitution of the United States of America. Now, what's important to note here is that Prophet Noble Drew Ali is saying, help me to save my people who have fallen from the constitutional laws of the government, which means that at some point in time, our people were in line with the constitutional laws of government. And he said he was calling on the support of all true American citizens, people that really believe in the ideals of what this democracy that is the United States of America, the republic. People confuse democracy. There's two forms of democracy. One has a definition in the same way that republic has a definition or autocracy has a definition. The other definition of democracy is basically what we do when we vote to elect representatives for us in the House. This is what democracy means when it is being used in the context of the United States of America and its Republican form of government. So the prophet is saying that he is depending on these true American citizens to bring them back into the constitutional fold again, that they will learn to love instead of hate. Now, being that we did not believe that we were citizens and that we were mistreated, we harbored a lot of anger due to our mistreatment. And this bred hate. This bred doctrines of hate. This bred organizations whose sole purpose was to match the hate. So it wasn't the light drowning out the darkness. It was the darkness combating the darkness. Martin Luther King said that only love could drown out hate. And we had lost that. And we followed so many mere ideals of man that we never really got back in a proper footing. There were organizations that came and taught us how to do for self, and we were able to do those things effectively, but we were never able to move or push the needle forward for our people in the political landscape. And this is why we now see a school to prison pipeline system. This is why we now see documentaries coming out like the 13th, highlighting the second provision of the 13th Amendment insofar as this involuntary servitude, and a person will only basically become a slave if he is convicted of a crime. And so when we look at what Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought, simple information that has been misconstrued over the years, it is imperative that we do a show like this to bring clarity. Brother Grimmy Yarnell, please come on and introduce yourself. I want to apologize to everybody. I'm still working out the kinks of this show and how to just get this whole thing going.
Hey, Islam. Yeah, completely understood more with the technical difficulties, because you know I have them on my show as well. Well, let me do something that sometimes I forget to do because of the technical difficulties on my show. First, I'm going to rise giving praise to Almighty God, Allah, the Supreme Being, the ultimate wise one of Noah, the Supreme Being, creator of the universe. Let me give honors to all noble and divine prophets, but more in particularly at this day and time, the great mastermind, Noble Drew Ali, the Supreme Grand Hierophant, North, South, and Central America. So, you know, I'm just glad to be on this show with you, brother, man. And everybody who may know me, may not know me, my name is Brother Zachary Grimmy on L. And you can hit me up via Facebook, and also we have a sister show, if you will, to Moorish World TV called the Tribe of Canaan. So check us out and subscribe. But this is an important topic, brother, man. So, you know, I'm gonna just play second string and fiddle with you know, with you, you know, in this particular regard on this show. But you know, we were talking about some things earlier, and I'm glad that you read Noble Drew Ali words, because throughout the decades, a lot of Noble Drew Ali words became misconstrued, if you will, and you know, used to support a lot of misinformation that's reflected not only in the sovereign citizenship groups, but also in the various temples as well. And that is the misinterpretation of Noble Drew Ali's meaning when he's talking about the 14th and 15th Amendment, the 13th Amendment, and so on and so forth. This caused a lot of confusion, and a lot of our people adopted a lot of the ideas that were being espoused by sovereign citizens because it sounded like it was in accord with Noble Drew Ali's words. So they just basically mailed doctrines into one, and it's persistent in the world today. So whenever you have the when you meet someone who is interested in moral science, you don't get an individual that's interested in learning the moral, spiritual, and philosophical teachings of moral science. You just have people talk about, oh, the law, and that's all you get. So with that, more, I'm gonna turn the flow over, and I greatly thank you for having me.
Oh, honors, beloved. I'm glad that you could make it on. Hopefully, Brother Ali Bey will come on a little later. But you know, this topic, I've spoken on this topic before, and it is a very vital topic, and I believe that it is a topic that is not, you know, that hasn't been done the proper justice. This issue of Dred Scott has really, you know, before you came on, I was speaking about Aline Bey when he brought up Mike Huckabee. And Mike Huckabee made the claim that, according to the Dred Scott case, quote unquote, blacks were not citizens of the United States of America. The problem with looking at one sole source without looking at any other arguments is you don't get to hear the other side of the argument. I used to say this all the time. I used to speak about one-sided scholarship, where people would only cite one side of the scholarship and not the full context in which the scholarship has been critically analyzed. And the importance of Dred Scott is vital in this regard. So I'm going to get into some of the notes that I have taken here, and I pray that you all, after watching this particular video, because our mission is to educate. At the end of the day, I am not here to be your entertainer. My brother Grimmy Arnell is not here to be your entertainer. I pray I can speak for him in that regard, but I know my brother, so I believe that I can in this instance. We're here to teach, and we are here to teach the importance of the information, not just of what Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought to us, but many of our great leaders. Brother Grimmy Arnell has a show coming up, I believe this Sunday, dealing with the Fahame founder, Sheikh Ahmed Dean, Paul Nathaniel Johnson, on the Tribe of Canaan YouTube channel. It's going to be a very powerful show about one of our spiritual leaders here in the United States of America that you know nothing about, who taught some real powerful, spiritual, uplifting, mystical information to our people. So, I look forward to that show as well. I'm going to be listening in, and I urge you all subscribe to the Tribe of Canaan YouTube channel. Hit the bell icon so that you do not miss, you don't miss a beat. So let's dig into this. Let's dig into this. Now, hold on one second. We're going to go into the Congressional Globe. I'm going to start there. I'm going to start after the Supreme Court case. Now, this is coming from the U.S. Congressional Documents and Debates, 1774 through 1875, from the Congressional Globe. House of Representatives, 37th Congress, second session, page 1639. Okay, let me read. Well, first, let me give you some background. There's a debate about the citizenship of the so-called Negro in the United States of America. And that's what this whole page is about these debates that's going on. Forgive me, I failed to take down their names because I cropped out a section of this article. But it says this: "But sir, if the right to the elective franchise is to be the test of citizenship, I beg gentlemen to remember that when this Constitution was ordained and established, under which we legislate, it was ordained and established through the suffrage of persons of African as well as of European descent in the majority of the states of the Republic. They," meaning our people, "assisted in the election of the very persons through whose agency the Constitution was finally ratified. Look at the records of North Carolina for information on the subject. Look into the legislative records of Maryland and Delaware, and look into the records of the New England states, and you will find that persons of African descent did enjoy the elective franchise and had a voice in the adoption of your Constitution. To this day, they hold and enjoy the right in several of the states of the Republic. You cannot, as federal legislators, prevent the exercise of this right by the colored citizens. You cannot help it. The old Bay State, true to her immortal traditions, recollecting that her soil is holy ground, marked with the footprints of the apostles and martyrs of civil and religious liberty, has held to her ancient faith that rights, even political rights, are inseparable from manhood and citizenship, and in no wise dependent upon the complexion of or the accident of birth, excuse me, basically saying at the end there that their complexion or their birth, being born into a quote unquote race of people, it does not determine their social status, not here in the United States of America. This is vitally important. And Brother Grimm, jump in at any time, after I read stuff like this, if you have anything that you want to add, because what these politicians from the North are stating in their debates with the people from the South wanted to keep our people enslaved. This is how the South was making their money. Too many generations had passed, whereas the European quote unquote slaveholders could not produce the way that they would have with free labor. They would have had to pay so many individuals to come in and do the job, effectively losing their profit shares, if you will. With free labor, you're giving up all the money. You're eating the pig and feeding the slave the guts and the nose, the rooter and the tutor, as they used to say. So it is vital first in understanding the position of the slave holders of the South, those people that felt that our people were nothing more than beasts of burden, due in fact to Genesis 9:25, of course, where it was stated that cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And this was a provision that was cited in the Congressional Globe in several debates with Congress. What was his name? Stevens, the vice president of the Confederacy out of South Carolina, spoke of the condition of the biblical Canaanites and their place in humanity to be nothing but servants. But the Constitution of the United States of America was not built off of these particular oppressive conditions. That's why there is nothing in the United States of America's Constitution licensing the institution of slavery. On that same page in the Congressional Globe, in the first column, you'll know that paragraph 4, where it says, those born within the Republic, whether black or white, are citizens by birth, natural born citizens. And there were also a few varying views on citizenship on that same page. Chancellor Kent of New York declared that every person of African descent born in this land is a citizen of the United States. And although born in a condition of slavery, under the laws of any state in which he might be held to service or labor, still he was a citizen of the United States under disabilities. This is extremely important in understanding our own psychology as a people. Number one, there are people that believe that the condition of our ancestors brought us into a form of slavery that is still pervasive today. And this is just completely false. Us being born here didn't negate the fact that we were citizens. Our failure to participate based on the mistaken belief that because we were born here, that we weren't citizens. And this is why we failed to act, and why I believe Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, by you being born here, don't make you citizens, meaning you have to demonstrate this fact. You have to become a part of the political process. If your votes were not important, there would be no reason for them to try to suppress your votes through the Voting Rights Act, et cetera, et cetera. Brother Grimmy Arnell, did you want to add in on or chime in on anything?
Yes, sir. When you were talking, I just wanted to basically address the briefly the idea and the history and the concept of slavery in the forming of this republic, if you will, or this nation. What people have to understand is that slavery was always in the world, and that slavery became a byproduct of America only, or a defect in a byproduct of America, based upon the fact that it was already practiced in whole scale in the old world, i.e. Africa, Europe, and Asia. So, this was an evil against the rights of mankind that was born before in ancient civilizations, and it carried on into the new age. And really, when you were dealing with the republic, if you will, or when you're dealing with America, and that's why Noble Drew Ali used certain symbolism for the new plan of the ages, if you will, because this country, even though it was born in the evil and the iniquity of that particular act, but it was the destiny of this country to basically go through that process to outlaw any human bondage and to perpetuate the rights of human freedom. Now, a lot of people might be listening to this and say, well, all of those sons of guns were slave owners and this, that, and the other. And they are 100% right. However, those people weren't even a party, if you will, to know the magnanimity of what this thing was supposed to become. And that's what Drew Ali, the prophet, was talking about in that regard. And they had, brotherhoods, ancient brotherhoods and secret brotherhoods that took place that, made sure that this country would come into existence and eventually follow those practices. Now, I said all that to say that after the American Revolution, this practice was supposed to be abolished. All of those guys knew that this stuff was wrong. You can look at their histories, you can look at their memoirs. The only thing that kept them bonded to chattel slavery was their sole economic bond, and feeling that, hey, I know this is wrong, talking about the founding fathers, I know this is wrong, but the bottom line, if I let this man go, I'm sitting on 700, 800, 900 acres of land that I will not be able to do anything with. So it wasn't nothing that had its evolution shortly before the Civil War, but these ideas of the fact of this institution being destroyed perpetually was ideas that were entertained at the beginning of the formation of this nation. However, I have to add, and we're not saying these people perfect, because they're not. What end up happening, as we always say, is that the people in the South who were these tobacco growers, they imported the Asiatic woman, because the Asiatic woman was the master of rice cultivation and food agricultural cultivation. So these people were not willing to let these go because they were growing this stuff. So basically what ended up happening is the North or the founding fathers and these politicians compromised before their Southern brothers, because they didn't really want to give up that cheddar that was being made from the importation of and the exploitation of free human labor. So what did they do? They basically kicked the can. They kept kicking the can down the road, and it just ended up in Abraham Lincoln's lap. So that's how we came about what we call the Civil War But the bottom line is that from day one, this place was supposed to be for human freedom. So with that, I just turn it back over.
Oh, yes. I mean, that was excellently stated, man. When you get, and like I said, I don't know, that wasn't the last show we did. Because I think we did the show with Dinamel last. I think it was the show before last. We need to do a show on the secret history of America. I think that's in line with this particular, with our particular stream of thought that's missing from just everyday conversation. This particular show that we're having now is missing from the everyday conversation. And this is one of the reasons why we're doing this show. Now, I've done extensive research on the Dred Scott case. It is by far voted the #1 worst decision by the Supreme Court of the United States of America. There's a blog, FindLaw.com legal blog. They noted and gathered the 13 worst Supreme Court decisions in United States history. And Dred Scott v. Sanford, 1857 was #1. They wrote, hands down, the worst Supreme Court decision ever. Dred Scott held that African Americans, whether freemen or slaves, could not be considered American citizens. This is the decision. The ruling undid the Missouri Compromise, barred laws that would free slaves, and all but guarantee that there would be no political solution to slavery. The opinion even included a ridiculous, quote, parade of horribles, unquote, that would appear if Scott was recognized as a citizen. Unspeakable scenarios like African Americans being able to vacation or hold public meetings and exercise their free speech rights. Now, before I get into, I'm going to get into the Dred Scott case first. Let us read the case. People need to understand what the case is, what the case is about. Many people just repeat things. Dred Scott was never reversed, and so we're still technically slaves. Well, that's not true. But let us give the people some backdrop. This is from Africans in America, PBS.org website, Dred Scott's Fight for Freedom. It states, Dred Scott first went to trial to sue for his freedom in 1847. 10 years later, after a decade of appeals and court reversals, his case was finally brought before the United States Supreme Court in what is perhaps the most infamous case in its history. The court decided that all people of African ancestry, slaves as well as those who were free, could never become citizens of the United States and therefore could not sue in federal court. The court also ruled that the federal government did not have the power to prohibit slavery in its territories. Scott, needless to say, remained a slave. Born around 1800, Scott migrated westward with his master, Peter Blow. They traveled from Scott's home state of Virginia to Alabama, and then in 1830 to St. Louis, Missouri. 2 years later, Peter Blow died. Scott was subsequently brought by Army surgeon Dr. John Emerson, who later took Scott to the free state of Illinois. In the spring of 1836, after a stay of 2.5 years, Emerson moved to a fort in the Wisconsin Territory, taking Scott along. While there, Scott met and married Harriet Robinson, a slave owned by a local justice of the peace. Ownership of Harriet was transferred to Emerson, which is interesting that when she married Scott, although she belonged to another quote-unquote slave master, when she married Dred Scott, she also became the property of this man named Emerson. It continues. Scott's extended stay in Illinois, a free state, gave him the legal standing to make a claim for freedom, as did his extended stay in Wisconsin, where slavery was also prohibited. But Scott never made the claim while living in the free lands, perhaps because he was unaware of his rights at the time, or perhaps because he was content with his master. I mean, that may have been thrown in there. It continues. After 2 years, the Army transferred Emerson to the South, first to St. Louis, then to Louisiana. A little over a year later, a recently married Emerson summoned his slave couple. Instead of staying in the free territory of Wisconsin or going to the free state of Illinois, the two traveled over 1,000 miles, apparently unaccompanied, down the Mississippi River to meet their master. Only after Emerson's death in 1843, after Emerson's widow hired Scott out to an army captain, did Scott seek freedom for himself and his wife. First, he offered to buy his freedom from Miss Emerson, then living in St. Louis, for $300. The offer was refused. Scott then sought freedom through the courts. So Dred Scott was able to save up enough money to, buy his freedom. But the wife of Emerson, who is now deceased, Mrs. Emerson, refused the offer. So Dred Scott's only recourse, which is what the Constitution guarantees, is to take it to the court. It continues. Scott went to trial in June of 1847, but lost on a technicality. He couldn't prove that he and Harriet were owned by the Emerson's widow. The following year, the Missouri Supreme Court decided that case should be retried. And in 1850, a retrial, the St. Louis Circuit Court ruled that Scott and his family were free. 2 years later, the Missouri Supreme Court stepped in again, reversing the decision of the lower court. Scott and his lawyers then brought his case to a federal court, the United States Circuit Court in Missouri. In 1854, the Circuit Court upheld the decision of the Missouri Supreme Court. There was now only one other place to go. Scott appealed his case to the United States Supreme Court. To reiterate real quick, the initial ruling from the states, and this is based off of the Missouri Compromise, was that Scott was a free man. It's like he lives here now and he's not a slave anymore. Well, the Circuit Court overturned the state court. The Supreme Court, the Supreme Court of the state, and then Dred Scott then took it to the Supreme Court of the United States. So it continues. The 9 justices of the Supreme Court of 1856 certainly had biases regarding slavery. 7 had been appointed by pro-slavery presidents from the South. Now you have to understand this. When an individual gets a term on the Supreme Court or gets seated on the Supreme Court, it is a lifelong term. The article states 7 of these Supreme Court justices were appointed by pro-slavery presidents from the South. Donald Trump just appointed a man named Neil Gorsuch to sit on the United States Supreme Court. I think he's about 50-something years old. He's going to see 3, 4 more, 5 more presidents before he dies. And so these people that are sitting on the Supreme Court right now are already biased. They're already from the racist South. It continues. And of these, 5 were from slave-holding families. Still, if the case had gone directly from the state court to the federal Supreme Court, the federal court probably would have upheld the state's ruling, citing a previously established decision that gave states the authority to determine the status of its inhabitants. Now, this is very interesting here, because what's being cited is that the district court, right, would have had to uphold the state's ruling. It would have had to uphold the state's ruling. Or if it went from the state court directly to the federal court. Remember, it was the district court that reversed it. And this state ruling stated that the states had the authority to determine the status of its inhabitants. The whole issue of slavery was that the federal government wanted to abolish the practice, but as we noted earlier, the slaveholders in the South, they said, no, well, we're not going to abolish this practice. And being that there is nothing in the Constitution of the United States of America that says we have to abolish, we in the South are going to keep our quote-unquote Negroes as slaves. This is important here, people. This is very, very important, and it's much more better than listening to, you know, people teach or not teach, but go on and slander other men. This is about a history that we know nothing about. The states' rights issues that were so prevalent in the South, and where we get Republicans today, who is the old Democratic Party, saying we don't want big government or we don't want the federal government in our business. And this is the platform that they run on. This is a dog whistle to a Southern racist Confederate base that's now pretty much spread out all over the United States of America. This is crucial. It continues, but in his attempt to bring his case to the federal courts, Scott had claimed that he and the case's defendant, Mrs. Emerson's brother, John Sanford, who lived in New York, were citizens from different states. The main issues for the Supreme Court, therefore, were whether it had jurisdiction to try the case and whether Scott was indeed a citizen. The decision of the court was read in March of 1857. Chief Justice Roger B. Taney, a staunch supporter of slavery, wrote the quote-unquote majority opinion for the court. It stated that because Scott was black, he was not a citizen and therefore had no right to sue. The decision also declared the Missouri Compromise of 1820, legislation which restricted slavery in certain territories, unconstitutional. While the decision was well received by slaveholders in the South, many Northerners were outraged. The decision greatly influenced the nomination of Abraham Lincoln to the Republican Party and his subsequent election, which in turn led to the South's secession from the Union. Peter Blow's son, childhood friends of Scott, had helped pay Scott legal fees through the years. After the Supreme Court's decision, the former master's son purchased Scott and his wife and set them free. Dred Scott died 9 months later. That's the gist of the story of Dred Scott. So many critical aspects in the history of what's being said here. Now, I want to address a brother in the chat real quick said, this is GT Int. He says, I could have sworn I used to hear more saying blacks wasn't citizens because of Dred Scott. Well, brother, you have a lot of Moors that make this frivolous claim. And like I noted earlier, that a lot of them make the claim because they're trying to sell nationality packages and push their form of Moorish or Moorish, M-U-U-R-I-S-H, whatever it is that they're trying to push. So, you know, but that's not true, beloved. Just to address that, I got the 5% right. Cat. Me right. And Bo, no doubt, I want you to come on. Let me just address my 5% brother, Born God of Law, in the chat. He been trolling my videos lately, man. Let me read what he said on the air. This is his only comeback, and most people that think like him. The black man is God and the white man is the devil. We know this, but it's obvious that some of us still don't have the understanding. Dudes still debating over the white man's constitution. Stop looking for social equality from the devil. Now, my thing is this, right? And I want you to come in, Grim. These people that make these claims, they don't understand that the laws that form the Constitution declared all men free and equal. And that what I just read, and I'm going to go back and read it again, the arguments, the debates that were held in the Congressional Globe, that when that Constitution was passed, our people were citizens of the United States of America. And my thing is this: if you cannot find social equality here, Well, the United States of America has a clause called expatriation. You can expatriate to another country and go live comfortably in a land where, the black man is God, and you can live there and, sip your godly pina coladas with your godly earths and be good. Why stay in a place where you feel oppressed and you don't have any social equality? Yeah, yeah, Greg.
Yeah, bro. Excuse me for laughing, but with all due respect to those people who hold those claims and hold those ideas, I just want to say this because as you was talking, and I read the brother's comment as well about that. One of the most important documents documents or videos or whichever form they get it in, that they could basically read in that regard, man, is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's 1974 Savior's Day speech, man. And which is very, very, very crucial. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I hear you more.
Okay, yeah, when those guys make that statement, I would like them to go back and listen to the Savior's Day speech of 1974 by Messenger Muhammad, who was the one who answered the questions in the lessons. And a lot of that stuff, man, he started to mature in, and a lot of those ideas that he started to mature in, and a lot of those things he started basically saying, hey, look, a lot of this stuff, we basically putting on ourselves. I can't remember, I hadn't revisited it in a long time, but the spirit in what he was saying was like, he was basically saying, we need to take responsibility and we need to build, and for all intents and purposes, man, start to become like part of this society, but yet build our own. He was saying, a lot of that stuff in so many words in the 1974 Savior's Day speech. And I want to address the other person who in the chat, and they were asking an honest question because they hear what you and I are saying, but they say, why y'all saying that about the Dred Scott decision? And all of the Moors, other Moors are saying that the Dred Scott decision is binding. And as we'll go in, it's nothing that could be further from the truth, just based upon some of the things that you read. And I want to point out a few things in some of the stuff that you read, because I was taking notes as you was talking. But
Definitely.
one of the first things that I wanted to point out in the uh, the reading that you gave is the Supreme Court justices and their families. And we basically have precedents. Look, let me say this real quick. This is what I want everybody to research in regard to that. Elizabeth Freeman, I don't have my notes with me, but I should have brought my notes with me today because I'm not at home. But Elizabeth Freeman, look up the Elizabeth Freeman case, and she's also known as Mum Bet. That's Mumbett. Mum Bet was able to sue the Massachusetts legislature, if I'm not mistaken, and was able to obtain her freedom. And I believe that this is probably maybe several years before the Dred Scott decision. I can't remember the years, but I know we talked on another show about Elizabeth Freeman, also known as Mum Bet. So how could she be successful years before the filing of the lawsuit on behalf of Dred Scott, and then Dred Scott be not successful? Now, no, she didn't try to file no correction status and all of that garbage, that people are talking about, so on and so forth. I shouldn't say garbage, but that all of those arguments that people make. Basically, what we are dealing with in the Dred Scott case is the whim of ideals. Now, what I took notes from you in that regard is to point out is that what's the Supreme Court Justice, Justice Taney, you know, and all of the other Supreme Court justices were biased in a system based upon familiar relationships with, you know, people who benefited from cotton, who benefited from, you know, all of the other cash crops, and probably not probably, but were invested in that system as well. So basically, it behooved them to form a majority opinion in regard to saying that Dred Scott wasn't a citizen of the United States. But you know, one of the last things I want to say is that Abraham Lincoln, you know, also came and spoke on behalf of the dissenting opinion that was written by Justice Curtis. And one of the most important things that Abraham Lincoln, I'm sorry, I think it was Abraham Lincoln quoting Justice Curtis, and Justice Curtis's opinion wasn't based upon religious, it wasn't based upon emotionalism, it was basically based upon the actual historical record and the case law, when he was saying that we were citizens from day one, you know, and that would backs up what Noble Drew Ali was saying the whole time.
Let me real quick more. I'm gonna give them the reference because I have that pulled up, and this is from a paper that was they were doing a legal breakdown of Dred Scott, and they was just destroying uh, Chief Justice Taney's opinion. And it says this. Let me see. It says a few months after the Dred Scott decision, Abraham Lincoln, foreshadowing a line of thought that would reach maturity in the Gettysburg Address, relied on Curtis's argument to show that blacks were, quote, part of the people who made and for whom was made, unquote, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And that came from Abraham Lincoln, speech at Springfield, Illinois, June 26, 1857, in the collected works of Abraham Lincoln, page 403. I don't need to read the rest of the citation. But yeah, you brought that up. I wanted to give people a reference to whereas, you know, they can go and find exactly what Abraham Lincoln was saying. He used that. You're right.
Right. And see, and one of the most important points, see, people don't realize what, you know, when these Moors running around talking about, oh, the NBCs, the Negro, colors, and blacks is not a citizens according to the Dred Scott decision and this, that, and the other. Really, what they you know, really what they are saying, brother man, is that they agree with the supremacists. They agree with when they quote the Dred Scott decision and say it was upheld. You know, they doing it out of not knowing, number two, but they are upholding the ideas of European psychology, because that was a conspiracy. Because Abraham Lincoln, I think, I'm not sure, but Lysander Spooner, and also because I know we go get into that too, but Abraham Lincoln, Lysander Spooner, and also Justice Curtis touted the fact that the laws, even in their day and time and before their day and time, the laws as far as our people were really starting to become stricter and stricter to restrict our rights. But before that, there wasn't a whole lot of restriction to the rights of, particularly, you know, in the North. And what Justice Curtis was basically laying down is that this what eventually began as us being part of the constitutional fold, it started to degrade. And this backs up what Noble Drew Ali was saying when he was talking about we fail from the constitutional fold. And what ends up happening is the municipalities started pushing harsher racial and segregationist laws. The state started doing it, and it progressed until it trickled down into the federal government. It became worse as it could possibly become. Because even with that decision, You know, I don't want to jump the gun, but even when that decision, when Justice Curtis just totally just blew up the fact that the Moors was there and that we took part in the Constitutional Convention that ratified the Constitution. You know, after the Dred Scott decision was rendered, he basically resigned from the bench and went on about his life because, you know, he was just devastated by the fact that these people pushed this law upon the citizens. And another thing I want to point out more, and I stand down, is that those Moors who talking about this 13th and this Dred Scott case and its binding, is that even when the Supreme Court passed it, a great majority of the states refused to abide by the Dred Scott decision.
Yeah, indeed, more. This Dred Scott decision, this Dred Scott decision, we have a very informed individual in the chat named Creative Solutions. He's speaking about the Federalist Papers, et cetera, and he's going in on, they are taking a factional position of state citizens groups that's really practicing a mob rule ideology, not upholding the national standard, which, like, and I don't know if this individual knows about Prophet Noble Drew Ali, but this is what Prophet Noble Drew Ali was teaching us, that to uphold the free national constitution of the United States of America, to obey it. You got Moors in the Moorish Science Temple of America that say that the Prophet wasn't speaking about the Constitution of the United States of America. And this is their way of accepting bits and pieces of this pseudo-sovereignty information. And it's really, really sad, to be honest with you. But I want to get into, I don't think I need to read what Justice Taney said, but I want to get into the dissent of Justice Curtis and Justice McLean. Now, I'm going to read what Justice McLean said first, and then I'm going to get into Justice Curtis. Many people focus on Justice Curtis. They really do not put any emphasis on Justice McLean, but he makes an equally strong argument as Justice Curtis. But Justice Curtis is, I don't know, I just guess his was so more academically done than just judicially done, that it becomes the focal point of legal students or law students and law professors, etc. Now, Justice John McLean was one of the two dissenters in Dred Scott. He said this: being born under our Constitution and laws, no naturalization is required as one of foreign birth to make him a citizen. The most general and appropriate definition of the term citizen is a freeman. Being a freeman and having his, meaning Dred Scott, domicile in a state different from that of the defendant, he is a citizen within the act of Congress, and the courts of the Union are open to him. This is what the dissenter, who is looking at the United States of America's Constitution, not his slave leanings in the South or his background of coming from a slave owning family. No, he's looking at this thing based strictly on the Constitution. And my brother Grimion mentioned the book by, well, he mentioned the man Lysander Spooner, but Lysander Spooner wrote a book called The Unconstitutionality of Slavery. It is imperative that every Moorish American read this book, because it opens up to understand what Prophet Noble Drew Ali did. You have to look at it not via conspiracy theories and guessworks and your own interpretations. You have to look at it through the scope of constitutional history. Without looking at it through this scope, you're just blinded and acceptant of anything that somebody that sounds like they know what they're saying is saying. Now, I want to get into what Justice Curtis said. See, he went in. He went in. But Justice McLean established simple points that Dred Scott was a citizen and that the courts were open to him. This issue of Dred Scott was based on Missouri and just the free territories in the North, particularly the Missouri Compromise, which led the seven bigots that were on the Supreme Court to rule that ordinance unconstitutional. So let's read what Justice Curtis said. Justice Curtis says this: did the Constitution of the United States deprive them of their descendants, deprive them or their descendants of citizenship? He goes on, that Constitution was ordained and established by the people of the United States through the action in each state of those persons who were qualified by its laws to act thereon in behalf of themselves and all other citizens of that state. In some of the states, as we have seen, colored persons were among those qualified by law to act on this subject. These colored persons were not only included in the body of, quote, the people of the United States, unquote, by whom the Constitution was ordained and established, but in at least 5 of the states, they had the power to act and doubtless did act by their suffrages, meaning their voting enfranchisement.
You gotta read that part again, bro.
Which one?
The part that you just finished reading is showing that the people that our people had power, unlike what these people are trying to say.
That's right. Now this is what before I read that sentence over, I want you all who are listening in to understand this. This is a Supreme Court justice saying this. This is somebody that has sat on the bench and studied law. When Mike Huckabee made that claim last year, news agencies, I believe Snopes.com, I know for a fact, Huffington Post, they pounced on them and they showed that the Supreme Court decision of Scott v. Sanford was subsequently overturned by a successive series of acts, which I'm going to get into in a minute. So my thing is, why are you listening to guys that call themselves Moors, M-U-U-R-S, right? And even some other people that claim to be Moors that may be a part of the Moorish Science Temple of America or some other group of Moors who have absolutely no schooling on the Constitution whatsoever other than what they have read from conspiracy theorist websites. Why would you take their words over a Supreme Court justice who lived during that time? As Brother Grimion pointed out a few minutes ago, Justice Curtis was so disgusted and dismayed by this decision, which defied not only the Constitution, but the divine will of the founding fathers of the United States of America, that he quit. He resigned from the bench, a lifelong term which will provide you a paycheck for the rest of your life. He was so mad that he quit. Let me go back and read that sentence. Curtis states, these colored persons were not only included in the body of, quote unquote, the people of the United States, by whom the Constitution was ordained and established, but in at least 5 of the states, they had the power to act and doubtless did act by their suffrages upon the question of its adoption. It would be strange if we were to find in that instrument, meaning the Constitution, anything which deprived of their citizenship any part of the people of the United States who were among those by whom it was established. I can find nothing in the Constitution which proprio vigore, which means by its own force or self-executing, deprives of their citizenship any class of persons who were citizens of the United States at the time of its adoption, or who should be native-born citizens of any state after its adoption, nor any power enabling Congress to disenfranchise persons born on the soil of any state and entitled to the citizenship of such state by its quote-unquote constitution and laws. And my opinion is that under the Constitution of the United States, every free person born on the soil of a state who is a citizen of that state by force of its constitution of law or laws is also a citizen of the United States. Now, I want you to come in, Grim, but I want to read or just reiterate this last part that Curtis says. This is important. He says, in my opinion is, this is a Supreme Court justice interpreting the Constitution and its history, its foundation and its framework, said that under the Constitution of the United States, every free person born on the soil of a state, any state, that's me saying any state, who is a citizen of that state by force of its constitution or laws is also a citizen of the United States. This means that the states had no right to disenfranchise anybody insofar as they couldn't be citizens. And this is what the 3/5 compromise was about, to which the North wound up laughing at the South for it, because they essentially noted that, okay, you're still saying these people are citizens, and we're going to get into that a little bit later, because the 3/5 clause was not a clause that noted that the Moors, called Negroes, colored folks, or black people, were 3/5 of a human being. We're going to touch on that later. Was there anything you wanted to add on that, Brother Grim?
You know, I'm laughing at that because I'm thinking about how the brother used to tell Ali Bey, he was like, you know, a lot of these brothers, man, make up myths and then teach them, and then they're just like passed down. And there was this particular brother in the MST of A said that we was what 3/5 of a human being, because we was missing what the other other parts, which was our nationality and our divine creed.
I was told that too.
Right.
I had put that in my book actually.
Right. And then, you know, when I laugh when I think about that, but really, you know, just to add on what you said, in all seriousness, it was just basically, you know, the hypocrisy of the southern states that, you know, they wanted to say for whatever legal purposes that, you know, these people were not human beings, but they still wanted them to be counted as numbers for representation before the government. And that's basically what the whole 3/5 of a person thing was about. It was kind of like a compromise on the part of the North, or rather the government, I should say, because those people in the South wanted those people who were chattel property to be counted as whole human beings, so that the Southerners could have more votes and more influence before the federal government. And correct me if I'm wrong, brother man, but that's what that particular argument was about. So they just say
that's a fact.
We'll just give you 3/5 for each one of those people, but it didn't have anything to do with that. Look, man, let me say this: a lot of people, and this is where the whole ham thing comes in. That I won't get too deep into it. But while people are always kind of say the law say, and then misinterpreting the law at the same time, right? The bottom line is this, man, is that we want to live in love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And we want to live in freedom, justice, and equality. And that those arguments that a lot of our brothers and sisters make, that they have borrowed from the sovereign citizenship movement and these various movements, man, is really not conducive to us building and dealing with other civilized people who live in this country and other civilized people who live in the world, because nobody else is making these arguments. Even the people who used to make these 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment articles, those people have realized that those arguments from those militia groups don't work anymore. Whereas they still carry the idea of the supremacy of their people. They just reinvigorated their efforts and became the Tea Party, which is now known as what? The Freedom Caucus. And they are pushing their ideals before the government in the form of policy, because they realize voting and being civically active and participating in your government is where it's at. So they could push, you know, their ideas and agendas before us, whereas, you know, our brothers are on the street getting punched in the face because they won't show a cop their driver's license. I mean, it's just absolutely asinine. And, you know, I always talk about this, and I'm gonna get off. I say that Moorish quote unquote law stuff is really like religion, because you can provide those people with all of the facts that we are providing them. And, you know, some people are still believing that, like people who believe in religion, regardless of what you tell them, what this is not real, that is not real. And that's how a lot of these people now are starting to really revert to name calling and cursing because you're talking about this stuff. And the courts, you know, have a terminology for it. No, brother Ali Bey like to say it all the time. He say call them ne'er-do-wells. And, you know, that's just the bottom line. So all of the energy that those people are expending in selling packages and getting people cars jacked up, getting people lives and stuff jacked up, we could use that ingenuity and that genius of those people, man, to really, you know, really make a mark on this land like everybody else do. But, you know, we just taking these frivolous arguments that, you know, them people didn't, you know, excuse my expressions, man, but hit it and quit it. And they would have moved on from that stuff. And, you know, now we done took up the arguments and we just mixed it with Noble Drew Ali teachings, you know, thereby embarrassing, you know, the prophet by putting those arguments with what he was saying and then misinterpreting what he's saying.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, what you said was vital, man. And I used to say the same thing, that the Tea Party was an outgrowth of the Southern Confederacy and all of their conspiracy theories. They realized this stuff wasn't working. Our people are still stuck. When we had that show, Brother Grim, me, you, and Ali Bey, and we had we were going at Aline Bey and Rami L. All of their arguments, they were so easy to smash. I got to use such a strong word of emphasis. They were just easy to smash, and they couldn't stand on any of it. The brother had for his main video, he was dressed in a suit, and he had a Black's Law dictionary right next to his foot. And it was funny that I was coming from out of the Black's Law dictionary, reading definitions that were refuting everything that the brother was saying. So my thing is this: why continue to push something that you're clearly being outclassed about? And say, you know what, I'm going to take a little deeper look, because we're not moving. That thing that they're doing is individualistic. People want to have this individual sovereignty with their individual paperwork, and it's not conducive to us moving as a political unit. Matter of fact, when I had first started the Moorish American Party, our very first political party, I was met with rejection by Moors that, they was talking about the logo, he put a fez on an eagle. Well, what about the idea of the political party? We could always change the logo. Oh, Noble Drew Ali didn't bring that. What do you mean? This newspaper clipping with Prophet Noble Drew Ali and a big bold headline that says endorse Anderson Prophet wasn't endorsing politics? What are you talking about? Where are you getting this from? So it becomes a point of this became their own ideas, and they held so many people back. And I've seen crack spots get turned into temples for temple meetings. I'm like, they're not doing that in the Confederate South. They're going to nice churches and having their church services, and then they're going to have their rallies, and then going to support their politician and get the measures passed that they want passed. This show right here, in conjunction with what Prophet Noble Drew Ali taught, this show is a product of what Prophet Noble Drew Ali taught. And we're proving it. We're proving it. So, I mean, if you wanted that.
I don't know who Creative Solutions is, but I think that person got some bricks or something, man, in their back pocket. they basically like smashing it, you know.
Man.
From the Federalist Papers, man. And man, and bro, I'm a kind of like emotional person, man, in those regards. And when I see, man, that people actually get it, man, it makes me realize that the things that we saying and the things that we doing, man, is not in vain. That's all I want to say. Peace.
Definitely.
Creative Solutions, man.
Definitely, yeah. Shout out to that brother Creative Solutions in the chat. I mean, he's coming directly from the Federalist Papers. If you are a Moorish American, look, if you come across this, even if you don't identify yourself as a Moor or a Moorish American, it is your duty to understand the history of the United States of America and how and why we're in the position that we're in, and it's largely due to our ignorance. There's billionaires here that don't know a lot of the information insofar as why we're in the position that we're in. They just made their money and they say, well, I did it, you can do it, without taking into account all of the social and economic ills that come from decades of government misappropriation, if you will, and bad legislation, whether it was redlining with the housing market, the thing that happened with the GI bills, gerrymandering districts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we have the information now, and shows like this, discussions and topics like this are going to become commonplace. Now, I want to get into the other critical aspect of Dred Scott. Was Dred Scott overturned? I heard Brother Polite say this. This is something that he has repeated on several of occasions. I pray the brother gets a chance to hear this, and I pray everybody hears this because it's vital. It's very, very vital. Now, the fact of the matter is this. Dred Scott was overturned because the Supreme Court cannot legislate from the bench. It can't. The Supreme Court determines what is constitutionally factual. Now, the Supreme Court can cause proper legislation through its decision process. That's a fact. But it cannot create legislation. Remember, Dred Scott was a singular instance that somehow spread to the status in that time of all Moors, or using the term then, Negroes, blacks, and colors. That's another show I want to do on Moors in America. Another hidden part of our history of large populations of our people in the South who identified themselves as Moors. Well, let me not get into that right now. So the first act that overturned Dred Scott was the Civil Rights Act of 1866. I'm going from biography.com. This is the 150th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. This was published April 7, 2016, almost a year ago to the day, by Greg Timmons. And it reads, the Civil Rights Act of 1866 reversed the 1857 Supreme Court ruling in Dred Scott v. Sanford, which denied a native-born, free African American the right to sue in court. In a ruling written by Chief Justice Roger B. Taney, the court decided that because Scott's ancestors were from Africa, and thus he wasn't a citizen, he had no right to take the case to court. The 1866 legislation also sought to overrule the Black Codes, laws passed by Southern states to restrict African Americans' freedom after the Civil War. The act declared, quote, all persons born in the United States, with the exception of American Indians, were, quote, hereby declared to be citizens of the United States, and that such citizens of every race and color shall have the same right as is enjoyed by white citizens. This is an act of 1866. It was the first federal law that granted all citizens equal protection under the law, regardless of race or color. Those rights would soon be preserved in the Constitution through the 14th Amendment, 1868, which addressed citizenship and equal protection under the law. Let's go back. Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I mean, without Noble Drew Ali, we can't have, in my opinion, we cannot properly have this discussion. And this is my opinion, of course, because he gave us the keys to put this thing in its proper framework. And he spoke about the free constitutional law of 1774. And this is where we get the adoption of the term all men are created free and equal, which becomes the basis of the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, let me just say, many Moors for years have said that it was the Articles of Association, and I used to debate with them and ask them, well, can you show me in the Articles of Association where the terms all men are created free and equal can be found? And they could never pull it up. And instead of just accepting the research, most of them would just push on with the misinformation. But anyway, Prophet Noble Drew Ali lets it be known that if all men are created free and equal, then there was no need for the passage of the 14th Amendment in the first place. Now, this becomes, well, this part of the conversation can drag out, so I'm not going to necessarily go there. But Prophet Noble Drew Ali is specific. He said there would be no need if all people, because again, this act of 1866, the Civil Rights Act, as you just heard me read, that declared all persons born in the United States to be citizens of the United States, and that such citizens of every race and color shall have the same right as is enjoyed by white citizens. Well, what Prophet Noble Drew Ali was saying, that once this Constitution was adopted, there was no need for such provisions. There were no need. I want to go back real quick to the beginning of what I was reading. You had something to say, Brother Grim?
No, I just wanted to add real quick. You know, basically, like a lot of the research too, you know, that had been put forward, you know, by Ali Bey, you know, we was basically talking and discussing this, man, for years and doing research on this stuff. Really, like the passage of those constitutional amendments was to, and I think the brother said this today as well, the passage of those constitutional amendments, well, the 13th Amendment, we know, abolished it, you know, the chattel slavery, but really the passage of the 14th and the 15th Amendment was nothing more than the clarification that was of the things that like what the prophet was saying that had already been created for the citizens of this government. And that's what that stuff was, because the ethers, like the Beat brothers used to say, you know, the ethers had been muddied up by this illicit activity that was one of the contributing factors to what caused the Civil War, and that they needed clarification on those things and exemplification on the prior things of what was in the Constitution. So that's why they had to pass those amendments.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
notice I didn't say for all intents and purposes. At least I don't think I said it.
Nah, you good, more. You getting there. It takes some time. I know. I know. But I want to go back to what I read earlier real quick, and then we're going to get into the 14th Amendment, and we're going to close the show out. You know, this shows like this are vital. Oh, they're not popular, and they're not meant to be popular. They're meant to be educational, and it kind of shows the status of where we're at as a people, because you would have people that would sit around and listen to a slanderer slander all day, or sit around and listen to somebody talk about the metaphysics of the cosmos and astral projection and things that are of absolutely no relevance to our plight as a people. And this information right here, they'll breeze right by. They will not even take the time to listen to it, because we have been programmed just to simply accept entertainment and entertainers. But we're going to continue to teach regardless. So let me go back. I want to read this real quick. I want to go back to the Congressional Globe, the U.S. Congressional Documents and Debates, 1774 through 1875. This is the House of Representatives, 37th Congress, second session, page 1639. And this is the debate between the North and the South. And one of the men from the North, as I stated earlier, apologies, I didn't take the name, I just cropped out this particular passage of that page. I've read the citation. You can all go back and listen and find it for yourselves, or hit me up. I'll be glad to provide you with the link. It says, but sir, if the right to the elective franchise is to be the test of citizenship, now what he's saying is, if the right to vote is the test of citizenship, he continues, I beg, gentlemen, to remember that when this Constitution was ordained and established, under which we legislate, it was ordained and established through the suffrage. For those of you that do not know what suffrage means, it doesn't mean suffering. It means basically your right to vote. Through the suffrage of persons of African as well as of European descent in the majority of the states of the Republic. They assisted in the election of the very persons through whose agency the Constitution was finally ratified. Look at the records of North Carolina for information on that subject. Look into the legislative records of Maryland and Delaware, and look at the records of the New England states, and you will find that persons of African descent did enjoy the elective franchise and had a voice in the adoption of your Constitution.
What? You got to read that again. This is,
he said,
feel that those man, this is you got to read that again. But let me say this real quick. Mm-hmm. Those people saying that you have to file these papers and carry them around with you and all of that kind of stuff to show, man, that stuff is worse than carrying around manumission papers, man, trying to prove that you're a free person. Talk about, oh, here go my apostille and affidavit of the this, that, and the other. Man, that to me, man, that's an inferiority complex. And
that's right.
I don't mean to be insulting, to anybody who out there who actually do that stuff, man. But Ain't no paper in the world can bind me. I'm gonna do what I feel. If I don't break the law, I'm a go. And we need these rules and stuff like that, man. You can't talk about you a sovereign citizen with no registration and no license. Go somebody trial down in the street and they keep going. There's no form. I don't want to get into that, but you can't even find a vehicle if you hurt somebody's child. And then if you hurt them, you don't have no insurance, so you can't pay them because you can't pay them back with your apostille affidavit. You can't you never can recompense a lost person, a lost child, but you can't even begin to attempt to compensate that person if you like this person, this ne'er-do-well. But man, you got to read that again. So
Oh, definitely.
don't miss that, because that's important, because we was participating way back then. And basically,
That's right.
this verifies what Noble Drew Ali said, because what you had was a degeneration of that was coming in later when they was disenfranchising the people who were already taking part and participating in the pre-national constitution.
That's right. And like, this is what I'm saying, and I want to reiterate before I start reading this again, that why are we going to listen to cats that are citing that most of them cases are not even Supreme Court cases that they're citing? They're not. Why would you listen to somebody like that when we have these people in Congress breaking this stuff down and they're asking them, look into the records. Let me read it. It says, look at the records of North Carolina for information on that subject. Look into the legislative records of Maryland and Delaware, and look at the records of the New England states, and you will find that the persons of African descent did enjoy the elective franchise and had a voice in the adoption of your Constitution. And this is why the prophet said, my people, let me go back to Prophet Noble Drew Ali's words here, because again, it's important. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, I need all support from all true American citizens of the United States of America. Help me to save my people who have fallen from the constitutional laws of the government. I am depending on your support to get them back to the constitutional fold again. That they will. You see what I'm saying? So Noble Drew Ali knew about this history.
Right. So the two key words there is fallen and back. So, if you've fallen, right, that means that you were in a position of being upright or in a higher state. If you brought you back, meaning that you were in that state before. So falling and back is the key words there. And people,
that's right.
A lot of people miss that demonstration more. Even with the I'm gonna jump the gun real quick and then I'm gonna shut up. Even with the 13th, the people, they got a certain group out there that call the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment the three dead badges of law, which is not verified by the words of Noble Drew Ali. And they try to say that the 14th and 15th Amendment is not law because the prophet said it's not needed for our people.
Yeah.
And I know you're about to go into the 14th Amendment before we close, but if individuals say that the 13th Amendment or the 14th and 15th Amendment are not law, which is taught like by some of the Moorish Americans, then how could the 13th and 14th Amendment bring the North and South back into union, like Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, if it didn't have the force and effect of law?
That's right. That's right. Okay, so let's read that part. Let's read what Noble Drew Ali says. And the issue of the miseducation of Prophet Noble Drew Ali is at hand. Academics, you go to Wikipedia and you pull up the Moorish Science Temple of America, and they do Noble Drew Ali a great disservice and injustice. If you pull up the Nation of Islam's page, They give you such an in-depth history. They give you breakdowns on the doctrine. They never get into what Noble Drew Ali taught. They just really harp on customs, and that's it. They harp on customs and basic facts, like he taught that they were Moors and not Negroes, blacks, and colors, but they don't get into this. So let me read Prophet Noble Drew Ali's words. Prophet Noble Drew Ali stated this: the 14th and 15th Amendments brought the North and South in unit, placing the Southerners, who were at that time without power, with the constitutional body of power. And at that time, 1865, the free national constitutional law that was enforced since 1774 declared all men equal and free. And if all men are declared by the free national constitution to be free and equal, since that constitution has never been changed, there is no need for the application of the 14th and 15th Amendments for the salvation of our people and citizens. I, the prophet, truly believe that my people will find the true and divine way of their forefathers and learn to stop serving carnal customs and merely ideas of man that have never done them any good but have always harmed them. There's so many layers
Right.
to peel back in that statement. You know, as you read it again, that for the who knows how many times I'll read it, I can see new layers in my mind. I can subliminally see a different layer as I'm reading that, and another layer and another layer. So when he's saying, I, the prophet, truly believe that my people will find the true and divine way of their forefathers. Now, he could be speaking of, in this instant, those Moors who have fallen from the constitutional fold because they were once there. Those ancestors that were there didn't fall. We fell through a succession of legislation. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, we followed names that deluded to slavery. Deluded. Now, the word delude, let me look this up real quick. The word delude means, it's a verb, to deceive, to fool, to mislead. So this is why Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and this is my opinion on this, my interpretation, wanted to get us out of using terms like Negro, black, and colored, because with these terms, there was a mental shackle. When you hear a lot of activists, you hear a lot of songs of people, you know, the activist hip-hop songs, there was one issue, and that was the white man's foot on the black man's neck. And automatically there's this air of superiority and inferiority just by using the name white and black. And Prophet Noble Drew Ali breaks that down in the questionnaire. But notice, as Brother Grimianel pointed out, Prophet Noble Drew Ali didn't say the 14th and 15th Amendments were in law. No, he said the 14th and 15th Amendments brought the North and South in unit, placing the Southerners, who were at that time without power, with the constitutional body of power. This was the purpose of the 14th Amendment. This is what Noble Drew Ali is saying that its purpose is. Not that its purpose was to give us any enfranchisement, because we had already had that. And the Dred Scott decision and the dissenters had proven this. Congress acted. Congress did act with the 1866 Civil Rights Act, and with the passing of the 13th Amendment solidified a protection. But that's all it was. The 14th, you have many that falsely state that the 14th Amendment gave us citizenship. And you hear the sovereign citizen Moors that walk around with their manumission papers, if you will, saying things like, oh, y'all are 14th Amendment citizenships. The 14th Amendment does not confer or did not confer citizenship. Nationality can only be conferred through two avenues, birth or naturalization. This is what the law says, and you can't get around that.
Right. That's right.
Now, if you want to add on, I'm going to pull up the 14th Amendment because we have this false idea that the 14th Amendment was never ratified. I was hoping that Ali Bey would get on tonight because there was a section of the 14th Amendment that the South had taken out, and it restricted the South. It was, and for whatever reason, I can't find it in my notes, but excuse me, it restricted the South, and the South basically said, "We're not signing that with that provision in there. We're not going to sign it." People they don't have a clue. They're clueless. And we're not just saying take our word for it. Go back and research what we're saying. And if we're wrong, call us on it. That's all. But we're reading from the actual court cases, the congressional records. I'm about to read from the Library of Congress. But Brother Grimm, if you had something that you wanted to add real quick, please, please.
Yeah, peace, brother man. And you know, it's really, I want to say this, man. I have to say it. You know, everybody, right now, wait in well, I'm not gonna say that. There is a campaign to demonize individuals based upon this research. So they won't debate the research, but basically what they'll do is try to demonize the character of the message bringer of this information. And this is what you see, going on right now. And I'm just thinking of, what we're discussing and the seriousness of what we're discussing. It just basically, bring that to mind that, man, what we are seeing right now is really, man, the unfolding and the really, man, the fulfilling of what really supposed to be going on, man. And I just wanted to encourage you as well as encourage myself, man, to keep going in this particular light, because as you was talking, I was just basically, looking at some of my notes. Now, Moores wasn't really demonstrating really hard on these aspects of the Reconstruction period and so on and so forth. They was just saying, 14th and 15th Amendment. But we went deep into that stuff, man. And I'm not putting nobody down. I mean, I ain't even taking this thing personal. And I have a note that I wrote called the Moors during the Civil War Reconstruction. And nobody was really pumping that information out. Now, there's certain groups that, took the information and research we put out, and they're doing lectures and stuff on it now at the same time, while on the sideline castigating our names. And for people who know me or whatever on Facebook may be connected, but I wrote a whole paper called Moors during the Civil War and Reconstruction. And just let me know when you're ready to chime in. And it was called the Moors during the Civil War Reconstruction. The Moorish divine and national movement was inevitable. And it was part 2 to an article that I wrote about the Honorable Robert Benjamin Lewis, who was the first Moorish herald in America in the early part of the country, in the early part of the country in the 1800s. Think maybe 30 to 50 years, I can't remember the date, before the birth of the Honorable Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And I just wanted to read this from my paper real quick. The Moors during the Civil War Reconstruction, the Moorish and divine and national movement was inevitable. Part 2. This little article serves as a pictorial representation of the fact that there were Moors, i.e. Hamites and Canaanites, so-called Negroes in the United States of America. and the Europeans were fully aware of these in their true character. Noble Drew Ali and others were fully aware of all of these, and his movement was an outgrowth and the summation between the interaction of the remnant of these Moors and the knowledge of the United States government during the Reconstruction. I believe they know of this. Excuse me. I believe that this prompted the wording of the Act 6 of the Divine Constitution and Bylaws, which is Act 6. With us, all members must proclaim their nationality. And we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are part and parcel of this said government. A lot of people try to say this said government is the Moorish Science Temple. No, it's the United States government. And know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to the slaves by the slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men must proclaim, excuse me, I just lost my space, and all men must proclaim and must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Now we point out in bold lettering the words of the Act 6, which is important to the topic of this article. The act points out a specific period of time which deals with the period between the two great wars, the Revolutionary War and the Civil War of Reconstruction. This period, which antedates the 1913 official inauguration of the Moorish movement and is a precursor showing a movement along these lines, were inevitable. We will analyze a few historical photographs in regards to the Moorish presence during this period of 1865, respectively. I know y'all can't see the pictures, but I just was just reading from the notes because this tie in to what Brother Wayl was saying. As a side note of history, which we will eventually deal with in detail, after the Civil War was over, Asiatics rose in power and assumed the helm of the government as it was supposed to be. And it happened through short-lived due to the second double cross of the Asiatic nation of North America, a term we will get into later. In the above picture, we have 7 distinguished Moors, and I have a picture of the first quote-unquote so-called colored senators and representatives being at the helm of government during the Reconstruction. And I also have a picture from my state, which is the reconstructed constitution of the state of Louisiana, when all the Moors were in possession of the seats of power in the state government. As you can see, all Asiatic Moors in the seat of government. Therefore, what transpired at the American Revolutionary War, which is not the subject of this article, and the Civil War, makes one ponder the truth of the statements made by Noble Drew Ali, stating we were part and parcel of this said government. So, I'm gonna just stop right there more, and I'm gonna come back later because I wanted to point out something about what a German soldier who came over during the Revolutionary War said specifically about the Moors. So I stayed down.
Oh, definitely, man. That was powerful. And it just shows that it was inevitable. And this is why the Moorish Science Society is now necessary, because there was a trail that was blazed for us. And all we had to do was follow along the trail. But there were some people that sought to muddy up this trail, and it wasn't followed. And I don't think it was meant for it to be followed by a certain group of individuals. I couldn't imagine some of the Moors, and I'm just speaking strictly of the Moors that I forget the so-called conscious community. I mean, if we're being honest, the so-called conscious community is just filled with a bunch of name-calling people that just act like savages. Pure, I call them intellectual savages, because that's all that they are, smart dummies. Excuse my phraseology, but I just have no other way to express some of the videos that I come across where I see somebody sitting down for 2 hours slandering somebody else all over YouTube. But anyway, the Moorish Science Society tends to carry the torch of Prophet Noble Drew Ali and getting our moral, social, and economic standing back on par within this nation, and do it through the vast, comprehensive program of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Now, let's get into this 14th Amendment, because this is key. Many people citing sovereign citizen websites. Backdrop. Sovereign citizen groups come out of, y'all hear me say this all the time, Euro-Christian, right-wing, racist / bigot or bigoted spawns of the Confederate South. This is where they come from. Their descendants are your Union Jack, Confederate flag waving people today. Their rejection of the 14th Amendment, again, what did Prophet Noble Drew Ali tell us? That the 14th and 15th Amendment brought the North and South back into unit, because the Southerners, at that time, they had no constitutional power. They had seceded. Noble Drew Ali teaching this in the 1920s. Most people, 99% of our people don't know anything about this. So these Southerners sought to take the 14th Amendment and disqualify it. And they came up with these excuses. And some of them was that the 14th Amendment was never properly ratified because all of the states didn't ratify it. So we have these debates online. And in these debates, the sovereign citizen Moors, they cite the same conspiracy theorist websites. And then they show, you see, these states, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 states didn't. And let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 14 states, so altogether, didn't have the necessary votes to pass the 14th Amendment. This is false, obviously. Or else, if you follow Prophet Noble Drew Ali, you have to admit that Noble Drew Ali misinformed us when he said the 14th and 15th Amendment brought the South back into the Union. It couldn't have it if it didn't have no power. Now, let's get into it. The first 28 states to ratify the 14th Amendment were Connecticut, June 30, 1886. I'm going to just run through them. I'm not going to get into the dates. I'll get into the dates based on the commentary that goes with it. So Connecticut, New Hampshire, Tennessee, New Jersey, September 11th, 1866, rescinded ratification, February 20th, 1868, March 24th, 1868, but re-ratified April 23rd, 2003. Some people ran with the fact that New Jersey never really ratified, but their initial rescinded ratification was ruled unconstitutional anyway. And that can be found in the court case Coleman v. Miller. Now, let's see, Oregon, rescinded ratification, October 16, 1868, re-ratified April 25th, 1973. Okay, Vermont, New York, Ohio, rescinded ratification January 13, 1868, re-ratified March 12, 2003. Again, these were two of the states, if I'm not mistaken, the only two states that did the rescinded ratification, but the court case of Coleman and Miller basically determined that their rescission had absolutely no impact on the adoption of the 14th Amendment at all. Read the court cases, stay off of these sovereign citizen websites, and stop listening to these MERS that are not giving you the proper research. I'm reading from the records. Okay, Illinois, Virginia, or West Virginia, Michigan, Minnesota, Kansas, Maine, Nevada, Indiana, Missouri, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Wisconsin, Massachusetts, Nebraska, Iowa, Arkansas, Florida, North Carolina, ratified July 4th, 1868, after they rejected it December 4th, 1866. Louisiana ratified it July 9th, 1868, after rejecting it February 6, 1867. South Carolina ratified July 9th, 1868, after rejecting it December 20th, 1866. Now, let's get into the states that, because all of this stuff is so important, man. It is so important in understanding that what these guys are teaching, that the 14th Amendment was never properly ratified, and they harp on these facts that these states that initially didn't ratify, but they never come back and show that this amendment was ratified. So let me continue. Okay, Alabama, Georgia, after rejection, Georgia ratified July 21st, 1868, but they initially rejected it November 9th, 1866. Virginia ratified October 8th, 1869, after initially rejecting it January 9th, 1867. Mississippi would eventually ratify. They never rejected. Texas ratified February 18th, 1870, after they rejected it October 27th, 1866. Delaware, and this was a surprise to me, rejected it in February 8, 1867, but ratified it February 12, 1901. Maryland, this is no surprise to me because that's where Justice Taney was from, rejected it March 23rd, 1867, and ratified 1959. California, May 6, 1959. Kentucky, after they initially rejected it 1867, they would ratify March 30th, 1976. So it is without doubt that it was ratified by not only all of the states, essentially, but the initial ratification, there was enough, because one of the claims that they made was that there wasn't enough states to pass it. This is just false. I want you all to go to the Library of Congress website for the 14th Amendment, primary documents in American history, 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This is the Library of Congress. It says the 14th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified on July 9th, 1868, and granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. Well, we know that that's not true necessarily because we were already citizens based on the congressional records already. So we, speaking from a Moorish perspective, or a black or Negro or colored folk or African American perspective, know that this particular provision that where it states and granted citizenship to all persons born in or naturalized in the United States is simply not right and exact, because we were already citizens prior, and the United States of America's own records already prove this. It says, which included former slaves recently freed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I just want to give some dates, and I'm going to close out, and I'm going to let my brother Grimm go in with the point that he wanted to get into from earlier. Now, it says, now these are the digital records online, the Library of Congress, 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. June 8th, 1866, the Senate passed the 14th Amendment by a vote of 33 to 11. June 13th, 1866, the House of Representatives passed the 14th Amendment by a vote of 120 to 32. June 16, 1866, the text of the 14th Amendment can be found in the United States Statutes at Large, Volume 14, page 358, 14 Stat 358, which means what? That the 14th Amendment is a congressional decree and has hereby, or since then, become positive law. June 22nd, 1866, President Andrew Johnson submitted a message to Congress announcing that the 14th Amendment had been sent to the states for ratification. Johnson voiced his displeasure with the amendment by stating that his actions should be considered as purely ministerial and in no sense whatever committing the executive to an approval or a recommendation of the amendment to the state legislators, or to the people. June 28, 1868, Secretary of State William Seward issued a proclamation certifying the ratification of the 14th Amendment by the states. This is a dead issue from here on out. Nobody will ever be able to disprove what's on the public record by using conspiracy theorist websites. If you can mount an argument, pull the congressional records. Pull the congressional records that state that the 14th Amendment was not law by the congressmen themselves. Because again, and let me reiterate, the Senate passed the amendment by a vote of 33 to 11. The House of Representatives passed the 14th Amendment by a vote of 120 to 32. There is nothing else to debate on this matter. There's no such thing as a 14th Amendment citizen. The 14th Amendment is law. The 14th Amendment has been ratified. Case closed. Brother Grimm, you could take us out. You could take us out from here, brother.
Right. You know, with that being said, Mo, I just wanted to basically digress back to the American Revolutionary War, and I wanted to touch on that. You know, it has something to do with citizenship, and we know that this thing started off rocky, you know, with the human relations, you know, aspect of it, and our people being put into chattel slavery. But again, you know, we have to understand the secret of the ages, the mystery of the ages of why a lot of this stuff took place. And we touched on it, I think, on one of our other shows on the tribe of Canaan. And we basically broke out the records showing, I can't remember which show it was, but we talked about the discovery of America being an outgrowth of the defeat of the Moors. Now, here, we have to be, I'm going to say this real quick. We have to be, you know, honest with ourselves and talk about the wrongs that was done by, you know, our ancestors as well in the ancient Moorish Empire. And I'm going to just leave that, you know, there, you know, but, you know, as far as our participation in this particular government, see, a lot of people don't realize this. They say that Crispus Attucks was the first man to die in the uprising of the American Revolution. Is that correct?
That's right, Moore. That's right.
You know, why will Crispus Attucks be front and center against the oppressive rule of the British, be the first one hurling a rock at British soldiers, and the first one to die if he had no established connection and interest in the affairs of men of the British, of this British territory at the time? That man did that demonstration because he was fully vested in the civilization around him, and the society, I should say, around him. And a lot of our people were. And these laws, basically what we saying is that these laws and stuff were progressive and started at one point and then became increasingly harsh as the conspiracy to keep our people out of the constitutional fold of government transpired. I want to read something real quick, and we can close out if you want, Grand Sheik. But we fully took part, even in spite of the statements that were made by General George Washington and then we were fully invested in the formation of this Constitution that we call the United States of America today, which came as a result of us successfully winning the revolution. This is the testimony of a German private who basically fought the decisive battle at Yorktown with the French Royal DuPonts, because the French came and helped because they were interested in fraternity and equality and brotherhood, if you will. But check this out, to not keep y'all waiting. I appreciate y'all tuning in with us. This is Daniel Floor, and this is what he said about our people. Again, he was a German private with the French Royal DuPonts. And he had noted while walking around the battlefield from that battle the next day against the British, right? Look what he said. This is testimony of his own words. Private Daniel Floor of the Royal DuPonts. He said that all over the place and wherever, let me start again. All over the place and wherever you looked, corpses lying about that had not been buried. And basically he's talking about the bodies from the war from the day before. But look what he says. All over the place and wherever you looked, corpses lying about that had not been buried, and the large part of them were Moors or Morin. He was a German, so he used the word Morin, and in parentheses they have Moors. So this was during the Revolutionary War. So our people, the Moors, i.e., so-called blacks, participated, in the insurrection against the British government. And the dude said that out of all the bodies that he seen on the battlefield that day, the large part of those were Moors. And that's
deep. That's deep, man. There's this battle, if you will, between Moor and black. Somebody said to me the other day, so one of my Nation of Islam brothers, I ain't gonna blow him up right now. He said the argument between black and, if we're black or Moors is played out. I said, well, brother, look, first let me say, I understand that black is used to identify my people. I understand that. But I also have come to an understanding that this was a name that was given to us during the time of slavery. And the fact remains, nobody has black skin. It's a redefined verb and it was redefined to become a noun for the basis of racial classifications. And, one day we'll get into that. We'll get into shows on the racial classifications in the United States of America. I think it's important for us to have these discussions. We're not trying to turn people off. There's some people that are emotionally invested in this black thing, and it is what it is. And for the most part, you're not going to be able to sway all of those individuals, even though they won't be able to prove that they're black. They won't be able to prove it. They start talking about the universe is black anyway. The fact that Prophet Noble Drew Ali sought to remove these labels that delude to slavery, that tricks us into believing that we're still oppressed and that we can't basically do anything, is vital, and it's a vital discussion. I wrote a paper, and I was requesting a paper to round out my paper on the name of the paper is on the website. We Are Not Black People, Analyzing the Socio-Political Construct. And I contacted the University of Massachusetts librarian because I was seeking a paper on the Moors. And I sent him an email. One of the students there did a dissertation on the Moors in the South. And it was on Google Books, and then the next thing you know, poof, it was gone. Like so many other works, early works that I had found, I cannot find them there anymore. And I explained to him why I was looking for the paper. And he said, wow, basically, I'm paraphrasing, I share the same sentiment. He said, because I don't consider myself a white person. He said, I think it's a stupid title for us to call ourselves. He said, I actually consider myself one of the pink people. And I thought that that was a powerful statement because I sent him my article and he read it and he hit me back. He said, oh, that was a good article. And he understood exactly what I was saying. Theodore Allen, who wrote the book, The Invention of the White Race, well, he came to the same conclusion. If you go on YouTube and pull up Theodore Allen's interview he did with some sister in New York years back in promotion of the book, he never refers to his people as white. He refers to them as European Americans. So I believe that broader discussions need to be had about this issue because it may be a psychological weight that's dragging us behind, that's stopping us from believing that we can do anything, like our lessons teach us, doing what our forefathers did, not dreaming that we can do aught else. And that we have to find a way to break out. It's a psychological issue. That's what we're suffering from. And shows like this, we're teaching. It has no entertainment value. But we pray that the intellectual finds it, the political scientist, the law professor, and say, whoa, wait a minute. This is interesting here. Because most of them, they're not familiar in depth with what we broke down tonight, believe it or not. I'll just pray that in doing so, we're able to formulate the basis to get our political party moving. Because this is how you do real work. I do work in the community where I'm at. I was just talking with a brother today, and we're talking about, he runs a chess club. So I want to start a boxing gym / club out here in my part of Georgia. And we were talking about merging the two. At the end of the day, that's good community work. But if you are not heavily involved in the political sphere of your municipality, your city, your state, then you're not doing anything. You're not moving the needle for the people. You're not doing anything on the legislative level to get them past the hump. And that's where the battleground is taking place at. And the people that know better, they're sitting in those seats controlling the fate of men with a stroke of their pens. Stroke of the pen.
That's right.
We have the same power.
Right.
Remember, Glenn, we got to do a show on all them brothers that was in office. That information you pulled up, vital.
Right.
And everybody needs to see that.
That's right, Moore. I just want to piggyback too. You got people, even during this election, that we just, the local elections are very, very, very important, but we had people, man, that just, we've become lethargic voters, man, and lethargic participators in our you know, in our government, man. And like you said, we let people, man, change our lives with the stroke of a pen. And those people realize that, so they can do a lot of things because they say, oh, see those people right there, they're not gonna vote. So now really what we have, man, is like these people are not, you know, redistricting, you know, their districts and stuff and moving the border lines of their thing. So now instead of what we have instead of voters choosing, now we having politicians choosing their voters by, you know, changing the actual jurisdictional boundaries of the people. I mean, and a lot of that. Oh, let me say this. Ferguson. And I think that the Reverend L. Sharpton, you know, pointed this out as well. And, you know, my wife had brought this to my attention. And I think it was like 13 of those people, 13%, if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me on that. But it's a very, very low percentage of the people in Ferguson where Mike Brown was killed were registered to vote and participate in the voting process. So, you know, basically, you know, you can have Susie Q and Phil Donahue and O'Malley and so on and so forth, who hate your guts, come and rule your municipality where you are in the majority. So of course those people have insensitivities towards you because your group already being a subjugated one is not represented before the government in which you live. And those people, live like that for generations with low voter turnout, and then expect those people to hire just police officers, just judges, just DAs, when the balance, if you will, was tilted on the other side, and then you expect something different. So, you know, and that was, I think a lot of that came up out of the study of, you know, the federal attorney's office, you know, under the Obama administration, you know, is that a lot of those people weren't civically active.
That's
in
right.
their jurisdictions, man. And let me, I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna get one last shameless plug, man. I have a YouTube channel. It's called the Tribe of Canaan. Saturday, we're going to have a show at 1 p.m. with the Fahame elders. If you don't know what Fahame is, it was a brother who came 6 years after the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and he started teaching the body of knowledge called Fahame, and it went into the adept Egyptian sciences way back in 1919. He's basically a forgotten prophet. And we're going to talk about that, brother, Saturday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the Tribe of Canaan TV on YouTube.
Definitely. Make sure y'all tune in and subscribe to my brother's channel. We trying to build them numbers up. We trying to teach. We're trying to reach as many people as possible. I'm working on several important papers, and that's why I decided to teach tonight as opposed to responding to, you know, just a lot of, I'm just going to call them distractions. At the end of the day,
ain't even no need to talk about them guys.
Yeah, if you're a Muslim, you're a Muslim. If you're a Christian, you're a Christian. If you're a Buddhist, you're a Buddhist. And you look into the doctrine of that particular Muslim to see how that person is supposed to act. And if that person's actions are the antithesis of that doctrine, then you know that that person is not living right and exact. I look in the Bible, and particularly the New Testament, and I see somebody that calls themselves a Christian, and I see them living out what Christianity represents, then I know that I can call that person a good Christian, etc., etc. So thank you all for tuning in tonight. This was an important topic And I don't say that just from my opinion. I say that because it's a fact. We've been citizens on this land from day one. The first 19 that came over in 1621, or was it 1619, the first 21? I've been getting that confused for years. I can just read it and forget it in an hour, so forgive me. But these first brothers that came over here, sisters, they were not brought over here shackled and bound and dragged off a chain slave ship and just auctioned off to be perpetual property. This is a myth. This is another myth that has to be debunked. And one day, in the very near future, we're going to touch on these facts. We're going to show and prove that the things that we know about the slave trade is even false. People came over here. They worked their term of servitude for 6, 7 years. They accumulated money. They brought themselves out of their contracts. They fulfilled their contracts. They went and purchased property. And this is the early 1600s. It's the early 1600s. They purchased their property. They married their wives. They had children that they Christianed in Christian churches. And they had the same rights as any other person in the colonies. And one day I'm going to do a show on that. We're going to do a show on that. We're going to get into all of these things that we believe that have set us back. But in all actuality, our ignorance to the subject is what set us back. And this is what, in my opinion, Prophet Noble Drew Ali was coming to show us. With that, I say peace and love to you all, honors, and thank you to my brother Grimm for coming on and demonstrating. And until next time,
Honors.
honors. Peace.
Peace and love.